Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist, and I'm an author of the book, How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
New on Curiosity Stream. How do you connect a 16th century potato to limitless energy production? Could Napoleon's toothpick have a direct link to a machine that predicts the future? And how can a 1700s conch shell chart a course to humans connecting their brains to the internet? James Burke's visionary series Connections returns for a new generation. Experience all new Connections. With monthly, annual, and bundled plans, find the one that works for you at curiositystream.com.
Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
Hey guys, happy Friday. Welcome to I've Been Thinking. I'm your host, Elena Grace. And happy October. Happy spooky season. I am recording this episode. I'm house sitting right now. I just moved out of my little townhome where I've lived for 3.5 years into my boyfriend's apartment. So it's our apartment now. That's something I have to get used to. But I'm house sitting for my aunt and uncle right now. So if you hear puppy jingles in the background or, puppy sneezes or anything like that, I've got Win here, but I also have their dog, Zoe, and Winnie and I are getting used to having a puppy around again. It is a big change from a 3-year-old independent lady, Anyway, happy spooky season, y'all. I have been so excited. I've been planning this month's episodes for Zoe. Lord. I've been planning this month's episodes for at least 2 months. I'm ready for it, y'all. But it's so funny, as excited as I've been, this has been such a difficult episode for me to sit down and actually record. And this today is a book of the month. I might start calling them book of the month instead of book club. But today is our October book of the month. It's The 7.5 Deaths of EVELYN Hardcastle. And y'all, it's an incredible book. So the fact that it's been so difficult for me to take the time to sit down to actually put a few thoughts onto paper, it's really shocking because I loved this and I have been so excited to tell you about it. But really just moving and being pulled kicking and screaming away from my 2 roommates that I have been BFFs with since we were freshmen in college 7 years ago, that's really taken it out of me emotionally. And then moving is really difficult physically as well. So I think I've just been exhausted and I've not been able to put the energy into it that I've wanted to. But I'm here today. This is probably the longest intro I've ever recorded for y'all. But, Zoe just jumped on the bed by herself. Okay. Anyway, on to the book. So, the 7.5 deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. Really, it's not something that you can just summarize because it's too nuanced to give you just like a play by play summary, right? But I will give you kind of an essence, okay? So it boils down to you're introduced in a very linear way to these characters, and then it kind of starts going every which direction. But you have a very unreliable narrator who basically just wakes up in a forest, right? And he doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know where he is, why he is, who he is. And he wakes up screaming the name Anna. He doesn't know who Anna is. But because that's the only thing he can remember, that's what he holds on to, right? And so that's really important through this whole entire episode, that's the thing he holds on to, the whole episode, the whole book. And I think it plays a really important part in his character development. But he wakes up, he doesn't know who he is. And things are happening around him, like he meets somebody in a plague doctor costume. He is standing in the middle of the woods not long after he wakes up, and he sees somebody chasing a woman through the woods, and he hears a gunshot. As he's standing there trying to figure out, did I just almost witness a murder? Somebody drops something into his pocket and tells him to run in a certain direction. And then he turns around and there's nobody there. You know, all these little things are happening to him. And you learn with this first incarnation of the narrator, you and he are learning together, right? And you realize that he's kind of in a time loop. And you go on, there's all these crazy things happening, but you go on to figure out that he is living the same day over and over 8 times. And each body that he's in, each host, he lives the same day in each of the 8 hosts, right? So he can interact with himself from the future even. And future him knows that, but it takes a little while for, him to realize that and figure out how to use it to his advantage and all of that stuff. But he has to solve a murder, he finds out. And that's the only way he can get out of this loop, right? And at first, there's a lot of vagueness. It's, you could have done this once before, you could have done this, millions of times before. A lot of vagueness. But he knows he has to solve the murder of Evelyn Hardcastle, the daughter of the Lord and Lady of the Manor, right? Well, all this stuff happens, and he realizes that there's another murder that needs to be solved. And that is the murder of Evelyn's little brother 20, I think, years ago. So there's his murder is essential to understanding who is going to kill her at the end of the night. So there's all the stuff happening, and he has to figure it all out. And he has to decide who he can trust, who he can work with, all of these things. And he does. He makes friends and is able to trust people who are not in the same boat as him, and then he also has to learn whether or not to trust people who are in the same boat as him, because he's competing against two other people. So it's plus, okay, so he's competing against two other people. Plus we have a guide, call him the plague doctor, because he wears a plague doctor costume. And then he's running from somebody who's trying to kill him, and who does kill him in multiple of his incarnations. So, y'all, there's just so much going on. And all of this is happening in early 1900s Britain, okay? Very early 1900s. So, at a country estate. So, all this is happening. You go on to find out, and I don't want to give too much away because I want you to read this. But you go on to find out that the people who are there, who are in the same boat as Aidan, the narrator, they're there for a reason. And so is he. So it's really good. You've got to read it. So I've been thinking a lot about what I want to say, what I want to tell you guys, because I don't want to give everything away. This is a thriller. It's not a horror. It's not a ghost story. It's none of those things. It is a thriller in the sense that you have to think. You are trying to solve this mystery along with him, and you want to. You know, you want to figure this out, and you don't know what's going to happen around the next turn. You don't know if he's going to die. You don't know who's going to die, you know. So I really don't want to give it all away. But I'm going to talk to you about just some kind of high-level stuff. So I'm going to start with the name of the book. This was probably the first thing Adam asked me about. And I have been thinking about this a lot. I've been thinking about this a lot. And there's kind of two little things that go into it. So originally, this was a British book, and it was titled The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. But when it was brought to the United States, they changed it to The 7.5 Deaths, because apparently there's a book called The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hugo, and they didn't want the two to get mixed up. Okay, that's fair. I feels like no worries about that. But the half death, you know, it does kind of make you think. Like, 7 deaths, that's, you know, this happens over the course of 8 days. He has 8 hosts. So, in this case, well, you just have to read it and think on it, because I can't tell you. But the half death does create a really interesting question. And it led me to ask, could that half death symbolize the death of Evelyn, who is maybe not so much herself anymore? Or could it symbolize somebody who was playing a certain role? I'm really unsure, and I'm also unsure if that's even something that we need to think that deep into. You know, were the curtains just blue, or was the author depressed? I feel like I'm putting potentially more into it than there has to be, but I digress. So now I want to move on and talk a little bit about Anna. The name that Aidan, our unreliable narrator, woke up, you know, that's the only thing he could remember is Anna. Her identity is essential to our understanding of the development of Aidan's character, right? So, but the thing is, we see Aidan interact with her throughout. And that's super, super, super important. But we don't know her true identity until the very end. And when you find out who she was to him in the real world, it really, I mean, it's shocking because you don't expect that kind of relationship. So when we see him throughout the book, you know, he's learning who he is. He's having to decide whether or not he's going to trust Anna without knowing her. But he decides, he says Anna is the only person he thinks that he can trust. And so we see him just in this one incarnation of his consciousness. We see how this is the end result of this experience for him. We don't see him when he comes into the experience, which, surprise, was longer ago than you would think. And he was angry when he came into Blackheath Manor. He was vengeful, and he comes to remember that there was some purpose for him coming there, and that it had to do with a woman, but he can't remember who or what. He thinks perhaps it was Anna, but maybe not so much, you know. But we get to see him choose. So in that sense, I mean that Aiden's realization of who he is, we see him essentially have an existential crisis, and then he comes to realize his own values, and he gets to establish morals. He gets a blank slate to paint on whatever he wants, right? And all of this was critical to his forgiveness of Anna for something that she did before they were at Blackheath. But in addition, he got to know her as the new, rehabilitated, very kind, often selfless version of herself, and not the person that she was in the real world. And for those things, you know, those were essential to who Aiden ends up becoming. But I also think that he had to learn what it was that she had done to him before, because Anna had transgressed against Aiden in the real world, and he had to learn who she was in order to choose to forgive her, right? Because he could go off of their experiences together easily and just say, oh, well, you know, we've done these things. She's my friend. We experienced these things together. Yeah, that's true. But if he had found out what she had done, or if he had, if she had told him later what she had done, it would have created, you know, a lot of feelings of betrayal, probably. He would have not been able to trust her at all. He really wouldn't have been able to trust her. I mean, I imagine that I wouldn't have been able to if I was in the same position as him. So getting to know her as this new version of herself, and getting to know himself as this new version of himself, that was very important. But Aiden had to choose to be these things, and then he had to choose to forgive Anna. And, you know, this, I think that's kind of, I don't know, that's kind of one of the scariest things that could happen, is having no memory at all of who you are or who you were or any of these things. And this book made me think about that. Like, I woke up the day after my 25th birthday party and had no memory after like 3:30 or 4, if I even lasted that long. I really don't even know. And that's terrifying to have no memory. Turns out I was pretty much asleep for all of that time. But still, that's so scary. So I can't imagine how terrifying it would be. And this book actually did put me in that position of having to imagine how scary it is to have no memory of who you are or who you were. So scary. So I'm going to leave you with a question. If you knew you did something terrible, would you want to remember what that was, or would you want to live with that shadow over you for the rest of your life? Think on that, y'all. And let me know in the comments on today's Instagram post what your answer is, because I really want to know. Y'all, thanks so much for listening. As always, I appreciate you so very much. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that this didn't give anything away for you about the book. I tried really, really hard to not hit you with any spoilers. Nothing too big, at least. Yeah, so thanks, guys, again. I hope you... I hope the dogs weren't too annoying. I'm really sorry about that. I will be in my new and improved studio for our next episode. So I'm really, really, really excited about that. And hopefully that means that sound quality improves significantly. And I'm not going to be recording in, a random bedroom. Anyway. Again, thanks for listening. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at I've Been Thinking Pod. Follow us on Twitter at Been Thinking Pod. I'm not very good at Twitter yet. I'm working on it. I promise. I just can't get in the groove there. But the best stuff is on Instagram. Subscribe on Patreon and help me continue making this project a reality. I do it for you all and for myself. I've got to be honest. I do this because I love it too. But I can continue doing it, if y'all, I don't know, give me a little bit of support. And also make sure you share with a friend. I challenge you to send the podcast to at least one friend. Tell somebody about it, whatever. Spread the word, because that is how we're going to be able to continue working on this beautiful project. All right, y'all. Again, thanks for listening, and I hope you loved it. I'll talk at y'all next week. Bye.
Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist, and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
It's important to properly dispose of unwanted medication or sharps. MedProject offers free and convenient disposal options near you. To learn more, call 844-MED-PROJECT or visit medproject.org.